What science do you do?
I teach biology at A level in IGCSE, and lower down in the school I've taught everything really. But I teach at the moment, I teach year 9 physics and year 7 general science.
Okay, can you elaborate a little bit more on biology?
Biology? Yeah, sure. I mean, biology it's what my own sort of degree subject is in. My own area is zoology, and I've been teaching biology here for, I suppose, 14 years now. So at A level and RGCSE. So it's a very nice subject. There's a lot of very interesting ideas in biology.
What did you find interesting about biology?
Personally, I mean, biology is an absolutely vast subject. It's huge. If you think about it, it encompasses anatomy, and physiology, and ecology, and cell biology. It's really everything about everything that lives. So it's an enormous thing. The bits that I prefer myself relate to evolutionary biology. I find that quite interesting. And I quite like a lot of sort of the old-fashioned zoology of animal phenomenon and plant phenomenon, I would say.
Well, thanks a lot, sir.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Chemist.
I'm not too sure why I became a chemist, but what enthused me when I was young was the science. And when I was doing my graduation, the graduate degree, I chose chemistry as my main subject and physics as my subsidiary. And that's because I love both those subjects. Then I decided to do a master's degree, which automatically meant that I had to choose something in chemistry. So I chose something in chemistry, and that's how I actually became a chemist as such.
What is your favourite part of chemistry?
Physical chemistry, I think. I enjoy the physics and the maths that's involved in physical chemistry. Although they are all interesting, I think that organic chemistry is also interesting, but inorganic chemistry is a bit boring as such. Is that the next question?
Overall, what is the most difficult part of chemistry?
If you mean to myself or to the students?
To yourself.
To myself. I had a tough time studying the chemistry because I was taught it very badly as such. Especially when I was doing my degree course, we had lecturers that just came and wrote things on the board, and there was this physical chemistry teacher. He was a lecturer. He had gone to America and done his PhD there, I think. So when he taught us, everything went on top of our heads as such. We didn't understand a word that he said, but we had to learn everything by ourselves. But when I went to do my master's degree, I had the pleasure of having him again, and by then I could understand everything that he was actually teaching us. So the difficult part, I think, is how you learn when your teachers are not too good. So I hope that Clara, who's sitting over there, can vouch for me and say that I actually teach by explaining things properly. Yes, Clara? Huh?
Yes.
Okay.
What's your favourite chemistry experiment?
Oh, I think the volcano experiment is a beautiful experiment because it depicts a volcano erupting as such. The only problem is it gives up a lot of poisonous fumes, so we are not allowed to do it as many times as we would like to do.
Okay. How do you think chemistry is important to life?
Oh, everything is chemistry. You are a walking test tube as such. You would not be able to survive if there were no chemical reactions taking part in your body. So everything that happens to you, like your biology teacher will say, in order to understand your body and how it works, you need to understand the chemistry. So chemistry is involved in many, 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 many things. We have improved our lifestyle mainly because of chemistry.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Why did you choose to be a science teacher?
Well, that's a very good question. I didn't originally. I started off as an engineer, and that was back in the 1980s when the environment in industry was very different from where it is now, and I just decided it wasn't for me. And having always had a very happy time at school, I decided to go into teaching.
Okay. What made you choose physics over the other sciences?
Well, as I say, I was an engineer. I worked as a nuclear engineer at a Sellafield reprocessing plant in north of England. I always had an interest in physics, been good at school. So it seemed a natural subject to go to teach.
What was your science teacher like?
The one I remember most was a wonderful chap called David George, and he'd spent some time in Antarctica and was always telling us stories about his times there. And he used to get very angry with us, and every time we wound him up, he'd take his jacket off and throw it on the floor, and then he'd march up and down, he'd take his tie off and throw it on the floor. At one point he even stood on the table and took his shirt off and threw it on the floor. I think it was all for show in retrospect, but it certainly kept our attention.
Do you enjoy your job?
Of course, very much.
Would you ever change job, and if so, what would you do?
Oh, it's a good question. I think I'm a bit long in the tooth to change now. I sometimes wonder if I was your age, what I would do. Would I be a teacher again? I think quite probably yes. I mean, it's very, very rewarding. It's got so many wonderful things going for it as a career, working with young people, helping to forge their futures. It's an excellent thing to do.
Who was your favourite scientist?
I suppose one of the most inspirational people for me was a man called Ernest Rutherford, who was actually a New Zealander. And he was the person who first split the atom and discovered alpha and beta particles, part of radioactivity. I think he's particularly inspirational because he came from a fairly poor background in New Zealand and went to Nelson College, which is a small place in the north of the South Island of New Zealand. And not many people really become great scientists from there, not in the late 19th century, but he applied for a scholarship to a university in England, and he didn't get it. He actually came second. But as it turned out, the person who won the scholarship couldn't go. And so, sort of by default, as it were, Rutherford went to University of Cambridge, and the rest of this is history. So it's a wonderful way. So many fantastic things in science come about by some sort of chance or fluke.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.